Good morning, everyone, and it's good to see you all here today on this first day after Christmas, with Hanukkah ending 1 week ago. Just a few days since winter solstice, seasonably chilly and sunny. So I'd like to just make a few comments about a section of the Sutra we have been studying, this Vimalakirti Sutra. And for those who've been following this, you know that the Buddha is trying to find a volunteer to go visit Vimalakirti and ask about his illness. So far unsuccessful. One loyal follower after another declines. So the little section today is about the upholder of the age. The Buddha approaches the upholder of the age and says, "You must go visit Vimalakirti and ask about his illness." But upholder of the age says to the Buddha, "World-honored one, I am not competent to visit him and inquire about his illness." Why? Because I recall once, when I was staying in my quiet room, at that time, the devil, Mara, appeared, accompanied by 12,000 heavenly maidens, appeared in the disguise of the god Indra, playing on musical instruments and singing. They came to where I was, and then Mara and his retinue bowed their heads at my feet, pressed their palms together, and stood to one side. I thought it was Indra, and I said to him, "Welcome, Indra. Though you enjoy good fortune, you should never behave willfully. You should contemplate the impermanence of the five desires and strive, therefore, to plant good roots. With body, life, and resources, you should cultivate the steadfast Dharma." But Indra said to me, "Upright one, please accept these 12,000 heavenly maidens. They can serve and wait on you." I replied that I, upholder of the age, a monk, a son of Shakyamuni, have no use for unlawful things such as these. It would not be right for me to accept them. But before I finished speaking, Vimalakirti approached and said to me, "This is not Indra. This is only a devil who has come to trouble and vex you." Then he said to Mara, "You may give these women to me. It is quite all right for me to accept them." Well, Mara was alarmed and fearful, thinking that Vimalakirti was perhaps going to make trouble for him. He tried to hide himself and escape, but he could not. He could not make himself invisible. Though he exhausted all his supernatural powers, he could not get away. Just then, a voice was heard in the sky saying, "Mara, give him the women, then you can escape." The devil, terrified, looked this way and that, and then handed over the women. Vimalakirti then addressed the women, saying, Mara has given you to me. Now it is proper that you should all set your minds on attaining Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, complete, perfect enlightenment. Then, adopting whatever approach was appropriate, he expounded the Dharma to them, awakening in them a desire for the way. And then he said, now that you have conceived a desire for the way, you may regale yourselves with Dharma delight and need no longer delight in the pleasures of the 5 desires. The heavenly maidens ask, what is this you call Dharma delight? And Vimalakirti replied, to delight in constant faith in the Buddha, to delight in the desire to hear the Dharma, to delight in giving alms to the assembly, to delight in casting off the 5 desires, to delight in viewing the 5 components as vengeful bandits, to delight in viewing the 4 great elements as poisonous snakes, to delight in viewing the mind and the senses as an empty village, to delight in pursuing and guarding a desire for the way, to delight in benefiting living beings, to delight in honoring and supporting teachers, to delight in practicing widespread generosity, to delight in strict observance of the precepts, to delight in patience, humility, gentleness, and harmony, to delight in diligently amassing good roots, to delight in meditation that is never disordered, to delight in bright, undefiled wisdom, to delight in broadening the mind that aspires to awakening, to delight in conquering and subduing devils, to delight in cutting off all earthly desires, to delight in purifying the Buddha lands, to delight in gaining merits, so that one may in time succeed in acquiring auspicious marks and characteristics, to delight in adorning the place of practice, to delight in listening fearlessly to profound teachings, to delight in the 3 gates to emancipation, and not to delight in untimely teachings, to delight in being friendly with those of like learning, to delight in a mind free of anger and hostility when among those of unlike learning, to delight in guiding and protecting evil friends, to delight in being friendly with good friends, to delight in a mind that finds joy in purity, to delight in practicing the teaching regarding the immeasurable elements of the way. These make up the Dharma delight of the Bodhisattva. Well, Mara then addressed the women saying, I want now to return with you to my heavenly palace. But the women said, you gave us to the layman. Possessing the Dharma delight that affords us with pleasure, we no longer delight in the pleasures of the 5 desires. The devil said, layman, you should give up these women. He who gives all he possesses as a gift to others is a bodhisattva. Vimalakirti replied, I have already given them up. You may take them away, and may you enable all living beings to fulfill their desire for the Dharma. But the women said to Vimalakirti, how can we remain in the palace of the devil? Vimalakirti replied, sisters, there is a teaching called the Inexhaustible lamp. You must study it. The inexhaustible lamp is like a single lamp that lights 100 or 1,000 other lamps till the darkness is all made bright, with a brightness that never ends. In this same way, sisters, one bodhisattva guides and opens a path for 100 or 1,000 living beings, causing them to set their mind on attaining Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, complete perfect enlightenment. And this desire for the way will never be extinguished or go out. By following the teachings as it has been preached, one keeps adding until one has acquired all good teachings. And this is what is called the inexhaustible lamp. Although you have lived in the palace of the devil with this inexhaustible lamp, you can enable countless heavenly sons and heavenly daughters to set their mind on attaining Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. Thus, you will repay the debt of gratitude you owe the Buddha, and at the same time bring great benefit to all living beings. At that time, the heavenly maidens bowed their heads at Vimalakirti's feet and accompanied the devil back to the palace, suddenly disappearing from sight. World-honored one, such are the freely commanded supernatural powers, wisdom, and eloquence that Vimalakirti possesses. Therefore, I say, I am not competent to visit him. So, one more failed attempt to find a visitor for Vimalakirti. So, well, I find this little section rich in twists and turns, and that's why I read the whole thing. This whole drama between the upholder of the age and Vimalakirti and Mara and the 12,000 heavenly maidens. So Mara is a figure that appears repeatedly in Buddhist literature as a shapeshifter, as a tempter, as what we would term a devil. And he uses skillful means for a devil, trying to get at whatever button is likely to work and push it. Not only tempting with sensual desires, as in this little story, but he might tempt with fame or prestige or wealth or security or power, any of the things that might tempt one, that might speak to the ego and enlarge it. So in this story, Mara is tempting the upholder of the age with sensual pleasures. And of course, the upholder of the age is a monastic and has monastic vows, follows monastic precepts, and is of course unable to accommodate these 12,000 heavenly maidens. So he declines with a mildly disparaging remark to Mara. And that seemed like his only option. I mean, he could either accept them or decline. But then Vimalakirti enters the scene, a lay person, and surprisingly accepts the 12,000 heavenly maidens. But as is often the case, Vimalakirti reframes the whole situation. So these 12,000 heavenly maidens who have been presented as basically objects of pleasure by the sex trafficker Mara. Vimalakirti reframes the whole situation and views them as kindred spirits, as sentient beings available for education, available for awakening, and goes on to teach them in whatever approach was appropriate. That little phrase is significant. In whatever approach was appropriate for each one of them, or groups of them. Because the Dharma is accessible in many different ways. And that's one reason that there are, as they say, 84,000 sutras. Not everyone hears things the same way. Not everyone resonates with the same message. So he approached these 12,000 maidens as individuals, trying to find the right message, to turn them from their habitual patterns, which involve the 5 desires. Basically, each sense organ is identified with a desire: eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and turn them to a phrase, Dharma Delight, making a parallel between sensual delight and Dharma Delight. And then he goes through this long exposition of what Dharma Delight entails. Well, Mara had expressed some fear of Vimalakirti because he recognized Vimalakirti as someone who could see through him. And indeed, after this long exposition of Dharma Delight, the maidens, or rather Mara, is in a hurry to get back to his palace, a safe place, and to take the maidens with him. But the maidens object. They say, I don't want to go back to that dark place. I want to stay here and participate in Dharma Delight. I've had enough of what you have to offer, Mara. And, but then Mara says to Vimalakirti, well, you know, a good bodhisattva wants to give things away, wants to be generous. So you should give the women back to me. And another little surprising twist is that Vimalakirti, instead of saying no, they should stay here and participate in Dharma Delight, he says, sure, you can take the women back to your palace, Mara. Take them back. And then he gives them some additional instruction, describing this teaching of the inexhaustible lamp, which may sound familiar from many other religious traditions. This notion of a candle flame that can light many candle flames and never be diminished. and instructs the women to don't keep it to yourself, pass it on, and bring light into that dark place where you're going. Such that each lamp can light 100 lamps or 1,000 lamps. And although you live in the palace of Mara, with this inexhaustible lamp, you can enable countless heavenly sons and heavenly daughters to set their mind on awakening. And in that way, repay the debt of gratitude you owe the Buddha. That's kind of in a way, seems kind of an odd concept. Of course, the Buddha, if interpreted as a human being who lived 2,500 years ago and is dead, long gone, what debt of gratitude can I pay the Buddha? I think the Buddha is used as a word that can be configured in many different ways. And it can include all Buddhas throughout space and time, the many different individuals who have preceded us on this planet, who have contributed to this body of wisdom that we can appreciate and can grow from. So there is a kind of debt of gratitude that we owe to the Buddha. And he instructs the 12,000 maidens to go back and repay that debt. So I've already gone on a little longer than I intended, but so I think I'll stop there. And I appreciate you're all giving attention. Let's see.